debate whether, of course, he's going to be ascending to this particular bill or not. And now that he's away, do we have the 14-day window that will come into effect if the president does not really sign this particular bill? Will it now be law? Many of you also are taking special umbrage with this. And this is what we're going to be following up much later in the course of the program. But for now, we'll take a keener look on what is happening with the dailies today. The good, the bad, and the ugly. This is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation today. Uhuru to stop fuel cost rise, says Raila. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Odinga says government borrowing spree is hurting Kenyans through taxation. Opposition leader assures that the president will sign into law bill that pushes the date of implementation of new law or new tax charges by 2 years as condemnation grows against Rotich's controversial move to ignore MPs and impose 16% VAT on fuel. This story, you can follow it on page 4 and 9 of the Daily Nation. On top there, the flag reads, Odinga says government's borrowing spree is hurting Kenyans through taxation. And also, reverse move all meters in court. The Treasury's controversial decision to impose a 16% tax on fuel products last weekend continued to receive condemnation yesterday as political leaders threatened mass action and unionists indicated they were willing to contest the move in court. In Marsabit, Deputy President William Ruto said Kenyans should not worry as they will somehow be protected from the effects of the resultant high cost of production. The question is how, right? That story continues on page 8. And then we have other reactions here. Duale says it's all up to Kenyatta now, but you see it? Eden Duale, the horse has bolted. Kenyans have no choice but to pay VAT on petroleum products. They can only appeal to the president not to sign the finance bill into law. Wilson Sosion saying social inequity is a big issue in Kenya as the burden of public debt is transferred to the poor. This makes life quite expensive and difficult. Musala Mudavadi, despite warnings against reckless borrowing since 2013, the government has played deaf and sank the country into a 5.1 trillion shillings debt hole. Francis Atwoli says we condemn KRA and the National Treasury and ask them to treat Parliament's decision as expressions of the sovereign will of the people of Kenya. That story, as I've mentioned, you have it on page 4 and 9 of the Daily Nation today. Married to 2 men and loving it. This is on page 3 at just 35. Rael Mokeku is the doting mother of 11 children, grandmother of 2 and wife of 2 husbands. You find all the details on page 3 of the Daily Nation today. Also, short official was a whistleblower. Family of former Garissa County official shot in Nairobi last week links the assassination attempt to his fight against corruption. This story continues on page 6 of the Daily Nation today. Also, we have the gritty details for you in our news bulletin this morning. Also, inside the Popat's battle for billions, Kenyan businessman Abdul Karim Popat left behind a multi-billion shillings estate spread across the country and beyond when he died in 2013. And now his sons cannot agree on who to take charge of what. You have all the details on page 12 of the Daily Nation this morning. The Standard. Kenyans resist high cost of fuel, it says. This is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. National outrage. MPs give Treasury CS Henry Rotich 72 hours to rescind move to implement 16% VAT on fuel or face impeachment, even as commuters begin to pay high fares. Meanwhile, PSV operators in some parts of the country are planning street protests starting today. That story continues on page 6 of the Standard today. And now, of course, you have all the new prices here compared to old ones. Kitale to Lodwar, right? We have that 2,500 shillings was the old fare. Right now it will be 3,000 shillings. Nairobi to Kisumu, 3,000 shillings. Nairobi to Kisumu, it will be 1,000 shillings, or it was 1,000 shillings. Now it will be 1,200 shillings. Nairobi to Kakamega, that one will increase also by 200 shillings. Also Busia to Kisumu, we have 300 shillings old price and 400 shillings now. Busia to Mumias, 150, 200 shillings right now. Busia to Bungoma, 250. 300 shillings will be the new price. Also, Wote to Mombasa, it was 1,000. Now it will increase by 200 shillings. Machakos to Nairobi, 200 shillings it was. Now it is 250 16%, the VAT imposed on all petroleum products that came into force on September the 1st. That story, you can follow it inside the Standard as well, where you have the full gritty details of this on page 6 of the Standard. Also, we have this on the front page of the Standard. Crushing taxes spark of protest, it says. Last straw, 16% VAT on petroleum products has sparked fury among Kenyans. Treasury is keen to raise funds to repay 5 trillion shillings debt and fund the Big Four agenda. This story continues on page 4, 5 and 6 of the Star this morning. And you can see also new fuel prices on display at the Oil Libya petroleum station in Westlands. That is how it looks, 127 and 115 for diesel, 127 for petroleum or petrol. And then we have also TSC accusing Wilson Sossion of misleading teachers on talks. This story continues on page 2 of the Star this morning. I am innocent. Rani denies role in the shooting of the former Garissa CEC Idris Mukhtar, and countrywide protesters VAT pushes up fuel prices to 127. That is what we have on the front page of the Star. The People Daily is up next, and this is a splash fuel hike pressure mounts on Uhuru. It says public outcry, anger greets new petroleum tax. Leaders urge President to act as MPs threaten to impeach Treasury CS to teach should he fail to suspend the levy in 72 hours. You have the story on page 16. And also we have quotes or bites here. The executive will meet Parliament to address the concerns raised by Kenyans. As a matter of fact, a solution will be reached. That is what we have, a promissory note from the Deputy President. Also, Raila Odinga, the opposition chief, says, I have spoken to Uhuru, and I can assure you what was passed, that is the Finance Bill 2018, will be signed. It's a small issue that will end soon. All right, that story continues also inside the People Daily this morning. Also, we have CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Phyllis Wakiaga, saying high fuel costs will undermine pillars of the Big Four agenda. It is a great disincentive for investment. Businesses will have to make very hard and drastic decisions. That story continues on page, as I've mentioned, on page 16 of the People Daily this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of Taifa Leo. Wakenya wachemka. It says, wenye magari walia huku wabunge wakitishia kuongoza maandamano iwapo ushuru dhidi ya mafuta hautaondolewa. That story continues on page 2 of Taifa Leo. And you can find all the gritty details inside the Taifa Leo this morning. Right, let's see what we have on the front page of the Business Daily. And this is your splash today on the front page of the Business Daily. Makini School owner gets 1 billion shillings in buyout, it says. Regulatory filing reveals amount that founder of elite institution made in April sell. That is a story you want to follow inside the Business Daily on page 4. It says Makini School's founder Mary Okello earned nearly $1 billion from the recent sale of a 71% stake in her high-end group of 8 schools to foreign investors. Mrs. Okello surrendered management of the Makini schools that host over 3,200 students in April this year to UK-based investor Skoll Limited and South Africa's Johannesburg Stock Exchange JSE listed Advtech. That story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. How NYS Farm made 872 million shillings in 7 days. A National Youth Service supplier received 872 million shillings payment in 7 days, raising suspicion of fraud. Documents filed in court indicate the court filings show Fastlink Suppliers Limited, whose directors are facing criminal charges in court. In one day, received 618 million shillings transfers wired in 9 different payments. You have that story well fleshed out for you on page 4, story by Galgalo Fayo inside the Business Daily today. Also, one dies in demolition. And you can see one person, it says, was killed and 7 others, including a police officer, was seriously injured during a protest over the demolition of Uhuru Market by the Narok County officials yesterday. That story also you have it inside the Business Daily this morning. Treasury plan for 3-year tax changes. New taxes on goods and services will be introduced every 3 years instead of annually if proposals by the Treasury are adopted. That story continues on page 5 of the Business Daily. Also 5 billion shillings core capital. That's Kiambu Town MP Jude Njomo proposed for banks up from 1 billion shillings. CA targets vendors in SIM fraud war. The Communications Authority of Kenya has moved to pile pressure and personal liability on SIM vendors in a bid to stem the resurgence of criminal rackets involving swapping of SIM cards to steal cash from mobile subscribers. You have that story continuing on page 7 of the Business Daily. Regulatory challenges hit marine insurers. Also, you have all the gritty details on money and markets inside the Business Daily this morning. We cross over now to Uganda and Tanzania. We begin with Tanzania, where we have the Citizen for you. And this is what you're waking up to today. Why Coast region is a magnet for investments. It says latest figures shows that the region is now only second to Dar es Salaam in terms of attracting investments, with its proximity to the commercial capital playing a key role. We have this story continuing on page 2 of the Citizen today, and also Dar Kampala strike deal on sugar. Right, where is Kenya? We left out, it says here, Tanzania and Uganda have reached an agreement on how to conduct cross-border sugar trading between the two East African Community partner states. This comes after Tanzania recently slapped a 25% import duty on 12,000 bags, that is 600 tons of Ugandan sugar. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, Professor George Buchweshaija, told the Citizen yesterday that following their recent meeting in Kampala, Uganda, the two countries agreed to sort out the differences on how Tanzania should import sugar from Uganda. That story continues on page 2 of the Citizen. Also, Tanzania eyes a new tech to fight aflatoxin. The technology being rolled out across Africa can reduce aflatoxin contamination by 90%. And this story continues on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Daily Monitor in Uganda. UNRWA to be scrapped in merger of government agencies. President Museveni reportedly unhappy with performance of UNRWA, especially in rural areas. Decision to merge agencies aimed at reducing wastage of resources. You have that story continuing on page 4 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Also, Museveni attends China-Africa conference. President Museveni receives flowers, can be seen here, from a girl on his arrival in Beijing, China yesterday. The president is in China to attend the Beijing summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation for CAC. And this story continues on page 4 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Also shot, forgotten, Michiana victims, several people nursing gunshot wounds inflicted on them by security personnel during protest against detention and torture. That story is on page 3 of the Daily Monitor if you're waking up in Uganda. Let's see what we have finally. I wanted just to show you an editorial cartoon here and some pictures as well. This is what I've received today from Stano. Right, high cost of fuel. You can see that Corinthian pillar is falling, and it's falling on the Wananchi who are actually running for their lives. You can see the Rural Express there. Right, this is just in light of what is going on right now with the fuel tax, the VAT that has been imposed on it, and of course many are crying foul about it. And this is what Stano has done for us today inside the People Daily. I wanted to show you briefly also, I think I haven't lifted it, but I just want to also take it back into history. This is 1973. You can see the first president of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta there, opening, or of course the commemorative plaque there. That is KICC in 1973. Jomo Kenyatta officially opening, of course, by then the Kenyatta International Conference Center. But right now, of course, we know it's the Kenyatta International Convention Center. And this is way back from our archives, courtesy of our print library, Maria Kanini Wambua there. Just to give you a bit of history, 1973, the KICC was being opened by Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. Okay, make sure you grab a copy of the dailies. And also here is just maybe a picture of what is happening currently. This is President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa with Xi Jinping of China right now. Of course, expecting a guard of honor there. This is in light of what is happening in Beijing this week. The forum starts today. That is a forum on China-Africa cooperation. And starting tomorrow also, we'll be having sub-conferences where also President Xi Jinping and Cyril Ramaphosa will be, of course, presiding these sub-forums, I should say, in China. Right, those are your pictures today. Make sure you grab a copy of the Daily Nation and other dailies for riveting, compelling stories today. Let's swing for the fences by looking at the highlights. Backstops with the president as a 16% VAT on petroleum products tax effect. Is there an attempted cover-up in investigation into the attempted murder of a former Garissa finance executive? And Al-Shabaab car bomb kills at least 6 in central Mogadishu. Now, former Garissa executive for finance Idris Mukhtar's family has raised concern over changes made to the police team investigating the attempt on his life. Family members say the changes reek of a quest to cover up the truth about the murder. Idris Mukhtar's father has expressed fear that, having been released from police custody, Garissa Governor Ali Kurane, who he holds responsible for the attempt on his son's life, is now in a position to interfere with the investigation.
We are really concerned about the unexplained or mysterious death of David Mwai, who was going to provide critical evidence, the disappearance of his wife, and also the testimony of the sister, which seems to give direction that there was an attempt to cover up a critical piece of the investigations.
We have been informed from the police source that the initial investigators were thrown out, and the matter was taken over by CIDs from the Kinoti office. We have the suspicion that there are 3 men who are now interfering with the investigation. I was aware as a father. He was calling me. There were threats, people who are calling him, giving him an information about him and his movement, where he spends, where he prays, telling him that we were sent by a big man from your county, a big man who wants to eliminate you.
The same people who attempted to assassinate Idris, who said that they had been given 2 targets. So that is information coming from the investigation. And they explained, these people, to the police, how they even came to my office. This office, we are standing outside my office, posing as clients. Our firm was instructed to write to the office of IBC, to the chairman, to try and get to the bottom of this matter. And one of the reasons why the family is concerned is because they are receiving information that there is a very accelerated attempt to cover up this particular dimension of the attempted assassination, which could provide the key motive for the actions that took place.
Meanwhile, besieged Garissa Governor Ali Kurane stoutly denies playing any role in the attempted murder of the former county finance executive Idris Mukhtar, who is fighting for his life in hospital. Addressing county residents in Daratud, Garissa County for the first time since his arrest last week, the governor, who was accompanied by Senator Yusuf Haji, Speaker of the County Assembly Ahmed Ibrahim Abbas, and other leaders, said he only became a person of interest to the police due to widespread propaganda against him.
Baada ya hapo kuna watu ambao wameeneza uvumi nyingi, na hata wengine wakapeleka ripoti kwa polisi ya kwamba kutaweza kuwa na uwezekano ya kuwa na hii mambo imehusika na siasa. Mimi sina sababu ya kuhusika na hiyo mambo. Sitaweza kufaidika na hilo jambo kwa njia yoyote. Sikuwa na shida yote na huyu bwana ambaye amepigwa risasi. Lakini hii ni siasa ambayo imeenezwa kwa njia mbaya, na mambo kama hiyo ikitokea, kile kitu ambacho kinatakikana ni ya kwamba yule anahusika paka ulizwe, unajua hili mambo vile unajua. Na mimi nimekuwa hapo dakika, hiyo statement ilikuwa 39 minutes peke yake. Wamesema ya kwamba hii mambo inahusika na mambo ya certificate ambayo nilipeleka kwa EAC. Mimi nataka kuhakikishia Wakenya ya kwamba mimi sina master's degree ya University ya Nairobi, na sijapeleka kwa IEBC master's certificate yoyote. Kwa hivyo mambo ya uvumi ya kwamba ati hiyo certificate imekuwa disordered na university ni watu wametengeneza kitu wenyewe.
Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta will decide whether to extend the period for the enactment of a 16% VAT on petroleum products by either signing the recently passed financial bill or not. The 16% VAT is already in force at petrol stations, and there is already a 14 shillings increase on the commodity. And of course, we're expecting a ripple effect on other commodities. And this can be, of course, the question that we're asking this morning: can the president save Kenyans from this situation for a second time and side with the amendments proposed by Parliament? That's a probing question. And of course, NTV's Kennedy Muriithi has more with that.
Mimi kwa majina naitwa Airi na Diambo Court. Mimi mkazi wa hapa wa industrial area. Familia yangu tuko watano. Na kwa sasa gharama kweli ya maisha imekuwa ngumu. Ni ile tu kujikaza kama mama. Juu sasa mimi ndio mama siku hizi ndio kiongozi kwa familia. Mimi hutumia stove kupikia, natumia mafuta. Natumana 20 asubuhi, kiweka chai, unaenda kuangalia unapata mafuta imezima, unafikiri chai inaiva, mafuta imeisha.
Irene's daily budget for the purchase of kerosene is between 60 and 70 shillings. Now for a litre, she will be forced to set aside more than 90 shillings.
Mambo ya stima, gas, hiyo gharama hatuwezi. Hii ni ya mafuta. Naona hata imekauka, haina kitu. Sasa hii ninapanga nitafuta hapa kambao tunanitumane. Na itoshi, naweka hata hiyo 20, 40, 50 na iwezi tosha kwa siku mzima.
In Mombasa County, Irene's situation is replicated here. People who use kerosene are a worried lot.
Hatuna pesa. Mapato yenye unapata ni kidogo, hata unafanya budget mpaka unashindwa utaihesabia vipi au mahesabu.
Natumia mafuta ya kupikia na ya taa. Maana zile nyumba za stima zinanishinda.
Hapa kwako una stima kabisa?
Sina stima, natumia mafuta ya taa.
Ndio transport, makazini tutashindwa kwenda, mashuleni watoto wetu watashindwa kwenda kusoma kwa wakati unaofaa kwa sababu mzazi atashindwa atanunua kipi awache kipi.
Transport is another sector that is bound to be affected with the increase in fuel prices, whose ripple effects will be felt on the prices of goods and services. And for public transport, the burden of having to pay more will be transferred to passengers.
Kwa nini wasifikirie watoe ile 15 shilling per liter fuel levy maintenance? Road maintenance fuel levy. Alafu ndio waingize nini? Waanze kutax the VAT. Hiyo tutatosheka nayo.
We are not here to strike and we will never strike about fueling. Kitu ambayo tutafanya ni tutapandisha fare yetu. Kama tulikuwa tunalipisha route fulani 50 shillings rush hour, tutaipandisha ikuwe 70 shillings. Because at long run, you will never fight with government at this time.
Tomorrow, stakeholders in the transport sector will have a crucial meeting where they will deliberate on 3 options they have on the table. That is, whether to move to court, hike fares, or ground their vehicles. Sharon Baranga, NTV, Nairobi.
Tomorrow for Sharon Baranga there, but today for us, of course. And we'll be keeping our eyes peeled to see, yes, if that particular meeting will be taking effect today. We do apologize for that particular story by... Of course, I'd say that is not clearly the voice of Kennedy Muriithi, but Sharon Baranga. But moving on, Opposition leader Raila Odinga has asked Kenyans not to panic following the government's decision to effect the contested 16% value-added tax on petroleum products, saying that President Uhuru Kenyatta will soon sign amendments to the law that will reverse the move.
Members of Parliament have already made amendments to the Finance Act, doing away with the 16% value-added tax on petroleum products. It is only President Uhuru Kenyatta's signature that is needed to halt the implementation of the new law.
Mr. Otich, if you can hear me, please stop those nonsense. When the Parliament has spoken, they have spoken. Who are you? Rotich, you are the one who brought sugar into the country, including the sugar with mercury. We are not going to forget. You should remember that the Constitution of Kenya, it is under the principle no taxation without representation.
Raila Amolo Odinga has been warning them that the debt of the country is going over the ceiling. They paid no attention, and now they want to tax the common man by increasing petroleum prices so that the common man can bear the burden of their responsibility. We are saying no.
We are saying that the 16% VAT on fuel must be stood down as we had done in Parliament last week.
All right, so is there any kernel of truth to what Right Honorable Raila Odinga is saying, that the president will send amendments to the law that will reverse the move, or is he misleading Kenyans? Let's just hear from our panelists this morning. We have Dr. Shemo Ochoa with us, who's the global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. Also, we do have with us Jeremiah Kioni, who's a member of parliament from Ndaragwa, and also is the chair of CRC. We have also with us Senator Okongo Mogeni, who is a senator from Nyamira. Right, Dr. Shemo Ochoa, listening to Raila Odinga telling Kenyans that the president will reverse the move, he has no power to reverse the move, maybe if he doesn't really assent to that particular bill. But he says if he assents to the bill, then, because he says that the Kenyatta will soon sign amendment to the law that will reverse the move. Can we get some clarity on it?
Debarl, I'm not a spokesperson for...
but for your reading as well, this is what I'm asking for.
Yeah, so I can only speculate. That's what I mean. I don't speak for Excellency Raila Odinga. In this instance, he's either setting up the president or they've already spoken. It's one of the two, and I'm not privy to whatever goes on behind the scene. But I think it would be the right thing to do. This increase in petrol price would be counter the handshake that the two of them signed on 9th of March. So I think it's the right thing to do. Let's suspend. Kenyans are already overburdened, overtaxed. We are told the new prices, if they are sustained, will be paying, Kenyans will be paying about double what even people in Ethiopia pay for fuel. And Ethiopia is a landlocked country. One would have expected that the fuel prices in Kenya would be cheaper because we border on Mombasa. So I really don't understand why Kenyans are being so overburdened. I think there are austerity measures. Debarl, when we discussed the new budget here a while back, a number of us felt this wasn't a good budget because we'd expected much better. But for the National Treasury and ERC and KRA for that matter to proceed to implement the new increases, even when Parliament have voted against them, I thought somebody would have said, well, can we wait for the president to assent to this bill to come into our act?
All right, let's hear from Jeremiah Kioni.
Thank you, Debarl, is that I have the disadvantage of not being, I cannot quite tell what he said because he said it in a vernacular language.
There was translation there.
So I can only take it from you.
But there was translation
that what you are saying is what you was saying. And this is the danger. This is the danger of national leaders switching to vernacular.
Yes.
Because we are not able to quite tell and perhaps follow what they would want the country to get for it. But having said that, I think what I think the former Prime Minister is saying is what every other leader or what every other Kenya would want to hear. that at a given time when the president is back in the country and the bill is before him, he will assent to it.
Yes.
So I don't think he's really setting him up. That's what you would say. He could only be setting him up if he was also, I know there's the handshake, but all said and done, the Prime Minister is out there and would want the bill assented inside there. So it's just saying what I would also want to say if I'm given the mic. I am also talking to a huge crowd that is complaining. So you are not going to tell him that the president is not going to sign it. You can't do that. You know, some of these things. And I also see it in other countries where you want to pin the leader down for not having said what perhaps you thought that you wanted to say. But the crowd, the audience listening to you, at times you have to play around with words so that you are able to talk to them in the coming days. So again, because they can deny you that audience. So
so even if it's you know, exaggeration, hyperbole, so you just have to play on with words. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and also look at the crowd. Honestly, at times we also expect us to say too many things. When the crowd is like that, it's charged against this whole thing. You are talking to them, you want them to keep quiet, you want them to give you audience. So you will say a couple of things that
the politician in you really come to the fore, yeah?
And the politician is the Prime Minister.
Where do you see the crowd that has really mastered?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say from Senator.
Not many of us can be able to withstand that kind of crowd.
I mean, of course, Debarl, this issue of handshake, nobody knows the terms of engagement. So we really don't know whether the PM is speaking after having spoken with the president, or is trying to echo what the public wants to hear.
Yes.
But, you know, if you were to speak of the public mood, I think the expectation of the Kenyan people is that wisdom will prevail and the president will indeed assent to, you know, the law that is suspending the implementation of the 16% VAT for another, you know, 2 years. But I think since we have an active spokesperson for the president from State House, and given the concern that has been raised by the Kenyan people, ideally this is a statement that should have come from State House, you know, giving an assurance to the Kenyan people, you know, so that we can bring down the tension and the anxiety. But having said that, it's of some interest, you know, when you go to page 3 of the Star,
page 3 of the Star,
there is a cartoon there which talks of anatomy of an irresponsible government, and it says part of it will be great public relations stunts.
Okay.
You know, but I think on a serious note, Debarl, the expectation of the people of Kenya is that a solution must be found. And I think when I was watching news yesterday, I saw even the deputy president himself gave an assurance to the people of Kenya that the government is going to open doors for engagement. And I think the only solution we are looking forward to as leaders is that we will cushion Kenyans against, you know, the hidden inflation in the cost of various items that will accompany this increase of price in petrol. I mean, you saw kerosene, I think, has shot up from 67 to 97. And I was watching a news caption of a poor lady in one of the households in Kenya saying that you buy fuel and before you even finish cooking, it's finished. So we must really be sensitive to the kind of pain that we are going to inflict on Kenyans and really suspend the implementation of this tax.
Right. Of course, we shall be discussing this intensively. And the editorial cartoon that Senator Kongo Mogeni is alluding to is what has been drawn there by Victor today. Anatomy of an irresponsible government. And you can see that we have, of course, looking on TV, we have his torso, but of course we can see his under things as well, and band-aids there. Great public relations stance, unsustainable borrowing, and we can see the clamp there. Oppressive tax regime. This is what Kenyans are really suffering from right now, oppressive tax regime. And there is a hue and cry right now from legislators that yes, should he not really go full steam ahead with this particular, or maybe rescind his decision about the fuel tax, then they will be seeking his, of course, resignation.
I think I've seen the MP for Bomet Central. You know, that's coming from very unlikely quarters.
Yeah, but they say they will impeach the CS.
Yes, I think that's what I've seen. It's there in the nation, and I think I saw it somewhere this morning, and I think even Honorable Keter is running a campaign to all the Kamkunji of members of parliament. Yeah. To discuss the way forward. So this is a serious matter, and I think even CS Rotich, it's on the start, page 6.
Yes.
Page 6 there is a story by the MP for Bomet Central saying, we will impeach you.
Yes, yes.
Yes, it is there. So Ronald Tunui there.
Yes, if you may just pick it up, for the MP raised storm over fuel tax, threatened anti-Rotich protest. We had also read that during our paper review, but where is the legality of this? Because why would they seek to impeach him? Is there any gross misconduct? I bet then, if anyone seeks to impeach a cabinet secretary, or for that matter, a public officer, there has to be the issue of gross misconduct. So this is neither here nor there. Senator Pogiso.
Thank you very much, Debarl. No, I don't think it is just a knee-jerk reaction. I think it is a reaction because of what happened last week when the members passed that amendment to try and slow down this or stop this. And then the same day or the day after, Rotich went ahead and effected his order. So the feeling is that of not just gross misconduct, but basically a defiance on the part of Rotich. Now, of course, we know Rotich is doing his job according to his terms, but we also think that they should listen to what members of parliament are doing. And so the idea there is that members of parliament have said, we are going in this direction, we want to slow down or stop this thing or suspend this, and Rotich goes ahead and effects it. That's what the feeling is. That's where the anger is coming from. But secondly, the poor just don't have a political party of their own. They belong in all political parties. And so if you see a reaction where members of the ruling party are the ones actually running this campaign to impeach Rotich, or even to try and impeach him, it's because the Kenyans, common Kenyans, are suffering. And not only common Kenyans, even those of us who drive in this city, you know how we are suffering as well. So it's affecting everybody, and it doesn't matter now which party you belong to. It doesn't matter now whether you are in government or not. The feeling is that you're hurting our people. And so this is a common rallying call now that everybody's hurting. And the desire, therefore, is to try and stop this thing. So what do you hit? You hit at the government of the day, and also particularly the minister in charge, yes. Right,
and also looking at what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation, this being the headline this morning, Uhuru to stop fuel cost rise. This is what Raila, this is what we're discussing. And you're saying that the president, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, is setting up the president as well. So if we have such headlines, and we have that statement tripping off his tongue, of course, in Kisumu, where he was speaking this, we wonder, is he putting the president in a very awkward situation? And what choices do we have? If the president does not really assent to the bill, of course, the 14-day window period will take effect, and that will just, of course, come automatically. If he does assent to it, then what? Governor Mudomi Njuki, good morning. Good
Thank you, Debarl. Let me echo the words of the member for Daragwa, Jeremy Akioni, this morning. The circumstances under which those words were uttered. You know, sometimes you are cornered, you are forced to make populist remarks to please the crowd under the circumstances, because unless Honorable Raila Odinga really had a conversation with Uhuru Kenyatta, this is a situation that you cannot say with a certainty exactly what is going to happen. Unlike the politicians of today, you have to remember that the president at the moment is doing his final term. Therefore, his interest is leaving a legacy, a good legacy for this country, and depends on what he sees as his priority. Probably short-term suffering and gains later in the future. If he thinks the collecting more revenue will make the country more stable and make the people who are suffering at the moment maybe have better times ahead, he will take that decision. Because at the moment he may not be really compelled by circumstances or political environment for him to make a political decision, yes, because he's doing his final term really, unless he's interested in politics again. Unlike those politicians who sometimes make populist politics by gauging the mood of a crowd, as he put it. Allow me to say that as on the issue of having to impeach Rotich and anyone else that we think is involved, I think there's more than that meets the eye. It is not a one-man decision. This is a vicious cycle that started in 2013. And you can see the IMF informed by the decision that, or rather by the information that we had increased the number of vehicles in this country. They sort of thought now they were going to target an area that has a lot of day-to-day liquids. Just like if you want to really collect quick tax, you look at what is the utility every other day. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, they forgot about those people who rely on kerosene. They forgot about those people who are affected by the ripple effect. And instead of this tax becoming what would have been the Robin Hood, it's now anti-Robin Hood, because we are robbing the poor and giving to the rich, because most of the people will be affected really in the lower cadre, yes, who normally utilize this. Mm-hmm. I remember I was in Parliament that time, and there were two arguments. One, there was the issue of adulteration of fuel, that because kerosene is used to adulterate fuel and of course have gains for those people who mix kerosene with diesel. And then there was an ambitious program that was started to package gas in small containers, which were calling Kadogo. And today I have not seen that gas on the shelves. Probably it's there, but I have not seen it in Kibera. I have not felt it in Mukuru, Kojenga and all that. So that now we can be informed of that decision. It's the right time to increase the price of fuel. Someone was saying yesterday, then why don't we just reduce the price of super and diesel to the extent that it's lower than the kerosene. That way they do not have to mix, because kerosene will be more expensive. But having made the diesel and super more cheaper in this particular case. Mm-hmm. But since this decision, or rather the law, was time bound, I think in 2016 members of parliament should not have postponed it again. That was the right opportunity for them to squash it all together and say, according to the targeted market, we're going to have suffering in this country. But postponing the problem did not really solve any problem, because today some of those people made a decision, like Mudhomi Njuki, I wrote in parliament, Jeremiah Kioni has to deal with my problem, but how has he dealt with it? Probably he has also postponed, if not squashed.
All right. And
that postponing again it will come a time, even if the president today says let me sign it and decide let's postpone again, it will still come again. So the best thing is to decide, where do we get this money that can run this country without hurting the mwananchi? Fuel, that will be like chasing our own tail, because that is taxation that is going to cause more inflation, and definitely we are going to end up with more poorer Kenyans than we have today.
All right. So you know, the Swahili wanasema inasema panya anauma huku yovuvia. He bites, yani ivuvias. So is that what is happening with the Big Four agenda, right? Because yes, we have a beautiful Big Four agenda, but still Kenyans have to dig deeper to pay for this Big Four agenda. If we may look at what also Iger has really drawn for us also in today's editorial cartoon in the Daily Nation. There you go. You may just take a full scope of it so that we can see it fully how it is. We have IMF there. If you can may have it there on full screen, and the Big Four agenda. You can see Wanjiku being pinned there on the petroleum. Yeah, this is all about petroleum. If we may just have fully on the screen, and of course, we wonder where is IMF and governments? Are we also following the dictates of IMF? Because we've had IMF also putting this country through the ringer before with the structural adjustment program that we had before, and Kenyans have really suffered. And it seems, yes, that has tapered off with time, but still now we're going back to the same vicious cycle where IMF is having a clammy finger over Kenya and following the dictates of the IMF. So we had a break when we had the Kibaki regime when it comes to the Bretton Woods institutions. But we had our own financing from the country, taxation regime. I think there was a robust way of, collecting taxes. And I remember even banks used to call people to come and take loans because there was enough money circulating in the country as well. True. Where did we drop the ball? Dr. Shemocho.
Debarl, I'm not an economist, but I'm a pragmat. Certainly the economics I'm seeing, and I appreciate, IMF, World Bank have the best economists one may find. But their priority is not Kenya first. So to that extent, I would give it more to our own Kenyan economists. And what I'm seeing is not right. Look, Excellency, the President goes to the US, for example. He has time to meet investors. We do know that investors bring only about 10% of what our own people, the diaspora, bring. But he has no time to meet those Kenyans. So we need to fix our economics. Look a little more internally than we look outside. So even as much as I appreciate we can't do without IMF, but what I'm seeing is not right. Why do I say this? So even the economics aside, with the big four, with the handshake, Kenyans once more are beginning to be very optimistic. And you need that momentum to drive the economy through. What is likely to happen with this 16% is to totally reverse that. This is why I'm saying, even though I'm not an economist, it's certainly economics upside down, and the sooner I think the President hopefully makes the decision to assent to the bill that was passed by Parliament to suspend this implementation, because the rippling effect is going to be huge, it's going to be devastating, and it's going to demoralize the Kenyans who are already upbeat that with this handshake and so on, with the big four, can we drive this country back to where it was, say, like in 2003, when Kenyans were voted the most optimistic people in the world? Because even if that's not economics, but you need that for the economy to take the tangent and the trajectory that's going to make Kenya great.
All right, so should we be pandering to the whims of IMF? Because, we are seeking loans and financing of this big four agenda projects that we do have. And then Mwananchi is the same person who's really suffering, Jeremiah Kioni.
I think almost 50% of the period President Moi was in power, that must be something like 12 years, he reasoned and acted and actually did as directed and as told by IMF and World Bank. And during those years, it was all suffering down the road. We didn't quite see the country improve in any way. That doesn't mean that we cannot listen to IMF, but for some of us, if anything is told to us by IMF to do, I would be very hesitant to do as they say. I would be keen to listen to our own economists back home, and perhaps temper what it is that we are told by IMF to do with what our own people think we should be doing. And I think the governor, Tharaka Nithi, has cleared some of these issues. This provision in the finance law that is now hurting us was passed by 11th Parliament on the instructions of IMF. Yes. And again, in the wisdom of the 11th Parliament, it was postponed for a period of 2 years. And what happened is that it was going to start, and it has started, come September this year. But I think what Kenyans need to know is that the amendment that we carried through during the finance bill last week has still not left Parliament. It will take a while before it leaves Parliament, maybe another week or 2 weeks. So we would expect the President to assent to it after a period of 2 weeks, or again it takes effective the new assent to it. But I would expect that the President would do something, either assent to it or give directions as to what he thinks we should help us move the country forward. What I want to bring out is that I don't think Rotich would have again acted outside the law if, without any provision in the statute, he did not effect the 16% VAT. So I don't see where it is that we want to impeach him. I mean, I'm saying this because as politicians, again, when you go before a crowd, you start saying some outrageous things. When you say you are going to impeach Rotich, you are impeaching for what? For having effected the law you passed in Parliament? You know?
This is where the legislators, you really mislead us.
Well, and I think by now you should have gotten used.
I've gotten used to
this kind of double speak, and you also need to know the individuals who can easily just get you into, you know, heading the wrong direction. I'm saying this because to start saying you are going to impeach Rotich, you're impeaching him for what? He effected the law you passed in Parliament. So you should wait until if the president, if he's effecting something that was not passed by Parliament. And you see, the executive does not listen to debates. It is what is passed in law, and I have been saying this even in Parliament. When you do a motion, for example, and the motion is saying, I urge the government to do 1, 2, 3, you've not told government what to do. You are only telling them, as you are thinking within the laws we passed there before, you may also want to do this. But again, remember, even if any of the CSEs was to try and do something, because they passed, and the minister, former minister, can tell us, because he has done regulations to support a statute that was passed in Parliament. Again, if those regulations are also not approved by Parliament, they can be annulled. So by and large, we are saying that we need to be fair to ourselves and say we need to wait until the bill finds its way to the State House. We would want the President to assent to it, but we would also want to hear from the Executive. What are the other ways that they can raise revenue to finance the things we are doing? VAT and pay, and again, as my colleague says, I'm not an economist, but I think VAT and pay are the easiest way of raising revenue, perhaps a lazy way of raising revenue, and a way that the executive
is it the lazy way of raising, or the only it could be the lazy way.
I'm saying perhaps the lazy way, which makes it easy for the executive to just say VAT on this, because it's easy to raise it, or raise the amount of pay that you must. So I'm saying that we need to hear from the executive. What are the other ways that they may want to put on the table to fundraise the issues that needs to be fundraised? Because again, if we have no development projects that are going on, we will have stored the country.
Right. But we want to see, because you raised this, this is not the first time that you've suspended these as legislators. Yeah, we had this 2 years ago, and it was actually pushed to 2018, what we are seeing right now. Rotich is actually just acting on the postponement that you had before. But you had the opportunity to shoot it down. Instead of actually suspending it or postponing it to 2018, then now you want to push it ahead then to 2022. What discernible difference will it make? Because we'll still end up on the same spot.
I think in between the time, and
could we hear from Senator Okongo?
In between the time, executive should have come up with alternative ways of raising the revenue that they are going to raise with the 16%.
All right. So we wonder what was the space between the 2 years that we had for this particular legislation being postponed? What was happening in between? Did we just postpone it? We stashed it away somewhere, it was gathering dust, and nothing was really, there's no communication happening on how we're going to raise revenue. Then it came to 2018, we retrieve it back, dust it off, and then we say, oh, let's push it again to 2022. So what really happens with legislations, and what is the rhyme and reason of postponing legislation to a further date or further year?
I think, Debarl, it's not something that's very unusual. You can pass a legislation and suspend the implementation period to a future date. So this is not the only legislation where, you know, the implementation was suspended
that's the question
to
I'm
a
asking.
future date.
What is the rhyme and reason for suspending the implementation period?
Well, I was not in the 11th Parliament, but I think where the country is now, we should not dwell on technicalities.
No. The technicalities is where now we're having the problem. Because now we're pushing it to 2022 again, we'll be on the same scenario. So we want to know what is the rhyme and reason for actually not implementing it. Why did we suspend it in the first place? And why are we also choosing to suspend it again to 2022?
I mean, the reason why we don't want it to be implemented is clear to all of us. It's that if we implement this tax, it will really hurt Kenyans.
But rightly, as you say, it will hurt Kenyans. But solution is not to suspend.
I think
the solution is to come with a prime solution on how we can handle it, not to actually put the problem
even as you
2020.
You deny the senator opportunity to say what he wanted.
No, let him finish. You cannot pick it on it.
Time helps us to come up with solutions.
Just a moment, let Senator finish.
Debarl, it seems in this show I don't have a right of representation. Yeah, but I think, Debarl, the concern of Kenyans now is that if we implement this tax, it will hurt the common mwananchi. And I think if you see the calculation in the papers, is that if we implement this tax, it means that in every liter of fuel, Kenyans will be paying a total of 57 shillings in terms of petroleum taxes, which is really too high. And to cushion Kenyans for now, and I think it is wisdom that Junet Mohammed moved that motion. We said, let's suspend this for 2 years. And that gives, I think, a window. It opens a window for government to engage. If you see the people daily, it says there, the executive will meet parliament to address the concerns raised by Kenyans. So maybe once these two teams come to a round table discussion, we can now go into the details of what we need to do long term. But in the short term, I think the agitation by Kenyans is that we should suspend the implementation of this 16% tax.
My question is, even as you point out to the people daily, where we have it here, that the executive will meet parliament to address the concerns raised by Kenyans. As a matter of fact, a solution will be reached. Why did we not have this executive meeting for these past 2 years? That's my question. Because we agree, and fair enough. Yeah, you're not answering my question.
It's a very delicate balance between making the IMF, of course, happy because of the role they play, and at the same time trying to keep the voters happy. So that is what cost us that very expensive decision of having to postpone instead of quashing. Because if you squash it, well, the IMF will have will ask you, I mean, where are we moving? How do we operate in this? Because there's a relationship, and there's a reason why they give the advice.
But exactly my question is, should we really pander to their whims? If we are caught up in that technicality with the IMF, because it seems then we'll be taking dictates.
It depends on what we are getting from IMF, and you know very well what we are getting from IMF.
We have done away with IMF before. Let's hear from Senator Pogisio.
I think that just like we are talking about the bill, I mean the proposed amendment, we must also speak about our relationship with IMF. Yes. IMF doesn't force you to do anything. You agree. You agree, and once you have agreed and signed that this is how I'm going to get my revenue, you have to follow through with it. Now, unfortunately, like you're saying, there was a time when we had basically managed our own affairs, and so we need to come back and say, now, instead of going into economics, let's go into pragmatism and say, what do we do with our people? What do we do about the situation? Because this is going to be cutting both ways. You want to be effective in raising revenue, or you want your people to live. And I tell you this tax on fuel, especially on the kerosene, which is going to make kerosene the most expensive ever, is going to affect a lot of people. And because of that, we must now begin to think. That's why I'm sure the Deputy President and the former Prime Minister are now beginning to say, hey, we haven't done anything yet, so we'll come back to you. And hopefully when they come back, they will be able to find a way of reversing this. But they must also speak with IMF and other interested parties. We also have debts in this country that must be paid. So I think those are the things that we must deal with. The question that you've asked, why have there been no meetings with the executive event before? Even when we had parliamentary group meetings and so on. And I think that's a very valid question. The second one is, why haven't we involved the public? We didn't prepare our publics for this. It has been a hidden secret between us, those who know about it, but the ordinary person was not prepared for it. And I think that if we were to prepare public participation, if we were to include our people to carry them along, then we might as well bear this burden together. But I think that's where we left it. Now, all of a sudden, as a shock, we published it, and everybody, and we publish it on TV, on radio, everything, and says, this is from tomorrow, you're going to pay this. That really shocks the system. Mm-hmm. And so the anger is real.
Right, thank you. We need to take a short break. No, we need to take a short break right now. When we come back, of course, we shall be drilling on this and a lot of other issues as well, looking at the dailies of the politics or the dailies that we had last week, because we're trying to see the politics of the week that has been. But before I take a short break, just to read one or two comments on social media, we have Abdallah Mdambo asking or saying, this is not a country that follows the rule of law to the letters. Why does that CJ Rotich want to overrule the parliament by forcing the implementation of, that is a CS, he should be saying, Rotich want to overrule the parliament by forcing the implementation of 16% VAT. Also, Obunga Apamo is saying the parliament takes too long to intervene. We spent more than what we make. Graft eats up to 30% of our income, and the parliamentarians pretend to care now. Also, we have Kimani KK saying, what is the use of calling ourselves a free country when this government goes against the wishes of its citizens and allows a foreign organization to bring about suffering day in, day out? Also, we have, it must look, I stand to be corrected, it's like President Mwai Kibaki during his tenure never allowed IMF to steer his economic agendas, probably knew they were snakes. Then we have also Ndenga Sidakwa, Sidakwa is saying, what did Mudomi do about the law in 2016? Wasn't he a member of parliament? All right, you will be answering this on the other side of the break. We take a short break right now. The probing question we're asking you, do you think the president should assent to this VAT, 16% VAT on petroleum products? Hit us on Twitter, AM Live NTV is the Twitter handle, AM Live NTV, or profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. Remember to use the hashtag AMLiveNTV. Don't go away. shall be following these stories for you later in the course of a day. But right now we want to hark back to our discussion with our panelists and wind up on the fuel prices as well. Just as a summation, so what is the way forward and what are the options that we have on the table so far? Parliamentarians are saying they're going to picket, right? Some of them are going to picket. I don't know if Daragwa, a member of parliament, is going to picket. I don't know if Senator Okongo is going to picket. Also, Pugiso will tell us. Governor, are we allowed to picket?
Well, of course, it's in the constitution they're allowed to picket, but it depends on whether really will have the positive results that they are desiring to see. It is very critical at the moment that we don't turn this thing political.
Thank you.
Because we would really wish that the president makes a decision that is devoid of any pressure from politics. That he should make a decision that is in the best interest of the common mwananchi. That is really critical.
Thank you.
But it's important to note that the fuel in this country has overly been overtaxed. Because we cannot be having a commodity whose over half or almost half of the price is contributed by the taxes in different forms. We have the excise duty, we have road maintenance levy, we have petroleum development levy, we have the petroleum regulatory levy, we have railway development levy, all different names, rather different form of taxes, just to ensure that we get a piece of what is a very fluid business that happens in the country. However, all that tax goes to the same pocket. So it is time as a government we looked at the different sources of revenue rather than overtax a commodity that will affect every mwananchi, because probably looking at kerosene, that's a very small percentage. Can you think of that farmer who uses fuel in making sure that they have economics of scale in their farming? What about the boda guy who has to take Mama Mboga's deliveries and so on and so forth? Even the transport itself, even of boda, it's a problem.
Right. Dr. Shema Chodo, we'll wind up on it, please.
I'm a very firm believer in national conversation dialogue. And Mheshimiwa Pogisio did raise the issue that if we had public participation and prepared the wananchi for the ultimate, if the ultimate was the only solution, it would have been a bit different than it is now. And I'm glad in this regard, religious leaders are meeting next week. As Dialogue Contact Group, we have identified 5 areas. One of them is economic reforms and anti-graft. And in this regard, let me propose some very simple solutions. For me, and government must be lauded for the fight against graft. We are told graft takes away 30% of our national budget. If we just clamp on that, we're already saving much more than any IMF or any of the other partners can ever give us. So this is why we must concern ourselves. It's reported that when we first proposed the SGR from Mombasa to Kisumu, that it was meant to cost only 80 billion shillings. Again, I'm not an engineer or economist in this regard, so I really don't know. One must question, how come then just Mombasa to Nairobi costs 360 billion or thereabouts? I mean, if it was to be 80 billion to move up to Kisumu. You know, these are the issues that we must ask ourselves. So for me, the solutions is let government deepen that fight against graft, because we're going to save much more.
Thank you.
Secondly, along with that, let's also have austerity measures. I think there's a lot of expenditure, both at national and county governments, which we don't need. The moment we can spend efficiently, then we'll not need much. Lastly, I must just mention, I think we have been borrowing very recklessly. This is why I'm still going back to that aspect of you borrow from IMF with conditionalities, while people who bring 100 times more without any conditionalities we are not paying attention to. We must rethink how we are going to finance our development in this country.
Right, thank you. Let's hear from Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, briefly as we're winding up on it. So what is the way forward? We need to know what is the way forward as we come up from this.
One of the things that I think is not very useful is members of parliament to go and picket, because they have been given the mandate by the people to do what they want to picket for. So if you go down again and start becoming a picketer, and you have the authority to act, you are the only one allowed to be within the principles of parliament, even force parliament to come back, and you are picketing outside the gates of parliament, it actually says that you've lost it again. But I think we I have a feeling, I believe that the president will act in the best interest of this country. And he's back, I'm sure, another day or two from now. But without doubt, these are very painful things for Kenyans, and we cannot say otherwise. It is true that it is very painful. But as somebody had a rooted area and then perhaps lost that, did not want to push hard on that line. Remember, why is it that the Constitution calls for the president to serve for only 2 terms? One of the things, and this is my opinion on this, is that one of the reasons is that during the 2nd term, he's likely to be more bolder in dealing with issues that are painful. And it is only by dealing with those issues that the country can make a change. After a while, people may be able to say, yes, he knew what he was doing and where he wanted us to go, after having bared the pain. I'm saying this because it's only the president who can help us out of this. Certainly, we have qualified personnel within Treasury, within Central Bank, Kenya Revenue Authority, persons who are also living in this country. They know what Kenyans are going through. And of course, people who are, they are terms with the kind of debts that we have, the kind of development money that we need so that the country can move on. And I believe that they should be able to balance all these issues out and do their best for this country. And that is why the president is voted for by Kenyans. And he should, I'm sure he's also listening to all the things that Kenyans are being said. But I am trying also to ask you and the media not to, for those of us who, when we say that I'm going to picket, we are going to impeach or teach, and that forms news, you are misreading, you are not dealing with the issues. You're just wanting to help Kenyans in a chorus, like yes and nays that we are always in parliament.
But is it, no, we're just reporting what is on the ground.
Yes.
We're just only but conduits.
Yes.
So you're saying we should not report
question those who are saying, you are putting us here to talk about somebody saying he wants to picket. And he's just taking our time for no good reason.
But he's a representation of all of you. Whoever's
no. I represent the people of Daragwa. I represent the people of Daragwa, and I sit in the National Assembly.
Member of Parliament.
Yeah.
But I'm not hearing solutions from you. What is the solution?
No, the solution is that we have to wait for the president to come back. The signature is what we are waiting for. There is nothing we are going to do as Kenyans between now and that. PS Rotich has no powers to suspend the implementation.
If he doesn't sign, then effectively,
if he doesn't sign,
14-day window period,
yes,
it will come into
effect. But most likely what you do is to do a memorandum. If he doesn't sign, that's the responsible thing to do. You do a memorandum and say, I'm not signing this for this and this and this. Then we will have to go back to Parliament without waiting for the recess to come to an end, so that we can deal with this issue because of its magnitude. That is what that's the way things will unfold. But remember again, what is happening today, and perhaps even if the president comes in tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, it's likely that the bill will not have found its way to his desk. It requires a few more days, but I'm sure Parliament will fast track it to ensure that it goes for signing perhaps within this week.
All right. So if we have a memorandum, it goes back to Parliament, then you'll treat it with some gravitas. That's what I'm hearing from, because now from your own estimation, it has not held any. It has not been holding any gravitas. But now that it's coming back
without the signature. No, I haven't seen it's coming back.
No, I'm saying in case
it comes back, he would say, why is it that he doesn't want us to suspend the implementation of 16 VAT?
Thank you.
And of course, those are the reasons that we then want to engage on in Parliament.
Thank you. Right.
Again is Debarl, don't be in a hurry.
Again is
but you need also to wait. Again is what the pain Kenyans are going through, and that I think is the sensible thing to.
Okay, let's hear from Okongo Omogeni.
Yeah, I think first, if we were to go by what Mheshimiwa Kioni is saying, is that the president would have ignored the concerns that have been raised by a majority of Kenyans, and the kind of pain that the implementation of this taxation will have on Kenyans. And I don't think that will be the wise thing to do. So I think going forward is the reasons why we suspended the implementation of this taxation since 2013 is because the economy was not growing at a rate that we could have sustained implementation of that tax. And I think Kenyans will agree that where we are today, the economy is not even doing any better than it was then.
Yes.
So the reasons why we suspended the tax then are still prevailing today. So there is justification in suspending the implementation of this tax for another maybe 2 years or so, as we have a wait and see attitude to see whether the economy will grow at a rate that can sustain the implementation of this tax. Number two, I think the answer to these shortfalls in government taxation and expenditure is to borrow what Kibaki did. And what Kibaki did is to have prudent management of our resources and a responsive government. In Kibaki's time, the solution was not to carry money in bags and take it to Harambee. The approach was to ensure that the government delivers on its promises. The government showed a lot sense of discipline in where the government was spending and implementing its project. The solution was never in Kibaki's time to look to IMF. In fact, it's during Kibaki's time that our tax collection, I think, grew from 300 million to almost 1 trillion, you know. And that should be the solution for us.
Right.
The solution should not be that we run to IMF, get these conditions, which hurt us as a people. That should not be the solution.
Right, it shouldn't be the solution, but the question we should ask ourselves, where did we drop the ball between Kibaki and the current regime? Does it mean that maybe Kibaki never had an ambitious, you know, vision for the country like we have with the executive, that now we need so much money?
No, Debarl, the answer is there. It's having a government that is disciplined, a government that does not play politics.
Yes, but we want to see the systems that were in place, because we know even in the previous regime we had, was it the efficiency delivery unit? Right, that was, and we had also performance contracts, from even the ministers. They needed to send performance contracts. If you don't really perform, then there's no reason for you to be in office. And I think even we take what is happening in the private sector with the corporate governance code. We can see nowadays millions and millions of CEOs being displayed on the dailies. This is what so and so is really earning, and this is how the company is performing. Right? So is there any justification why we should be paying this CEO this good tidy sum of money while the company itself is suffering? Why should they be paid bonuses, huge amount of bonuses, while the company is suffering? These are critical questions we need to ask the cabinet secretaries, and then they need to send these performance contracts as well. If we are to realize, and where did this efficiency delivery unit, these systems in place that we had, where did they go? Ogisio.
Well, first of all, I think discipline is the thing that we must go back to. Both fiscal discipline and also, you know, the management of this country must be in a disciplined manner. Where we drop the ball is obviously, you know, where we drop the ball. If the ball was passed from Kibaki to Uhuru Kenyatta, the ball must have dropped somewhere. The idea is, that in this term where now Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta is looking to be bolder in dealing with these things, this is the time to reverse all those things. He must now act. And Debarl, I think the problem with us in this country is that your first term, as a colleague has said, is your populist term. But now there's no more populism. You're handing over in a few years, and you must begin to look at what am I going to do to put this country back. Now, secondly, we are now dealing with a very serious matter. The very serious matter is of this increase in tax in fuel.
Yes.
And everybody is angry. And I tell you, impunity in one place is impunity everywhere. And anger in one place is anger everywhere. And so I'm saying basically that if you have a situation like this one, you must drop whatever you are doing and find a way of cutting costs. If you are on what do you call it, the four big agenda, you think about how you're going to do those things without hurting your people. Otherwise, the people who are supposed to help you to bring change are your own ordinary people. I want to specifically quote the situation where we are in right now, where ERC has been increasing fuels on their own, increasing and reducing, increasing, and more of increasing. And then all of a sudden now we have this permanent increase. You know, it is really hurting, and in this particular one. And the farmers of this country, especially people who depend on fuel for farming, are already hurting. Farmers in the Rift Valley, as you have seen, maize farmers have not been paid. Now a new season is coming and their fuel is gone up. So, you know, you can expect that there'll be anger everywhere. And I'm appealing now to the presidency that this is a time to show that you care about our people more than even about the other agenda of development. Because if the people are not okay, you can't do anything. And as you go to China, you go everywhere and there's goodwill. This is the best time to bring success to your own people. I'm just saying basically that we have a situation in our hands. And when you have a situation in your hands, we must come together to think about how to sort out this situation. Parliament cannot act separately. The executive now cannot act separately. It is the people in the middle, and we must go. This show of opulence also doesn't help our people. You know, if the people are hurting, let's not also display opulence in some respects. Let's move in a way that we respect the situation of our people. People are hurting very much. Thank you.
Right, people are hurting. Let's see how they're hurting. We have reactions on Twitter, and we have Black Album is saying politicians should not turn this fuel tax thing into a 2022 contest. We need it solved now. I believe His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta will do the right thing. Also, we have Oruko Sitima saying, Honorable Kioni is hoodwinking us. A bill doesn't require days to get to Kenyatta's desk. We've seen bills landing there and signed the same afternoon. They're passed, right? Maybe...
But this is a finance bill, very voluminous.
All right, then we have Commander M. Douglas saying we don't have to cry over high economy rates when we know we are singing Tano Tano, right? Kumira Kumira, I don't know what that means. I hope it's not really an expletive. Also, we have Obunga Opamo saying it's starting in that a Kenyan is working so hard while someone signs deals with IMF now. The same Kenyan is subjected to 16% VAT. Corruption is at the highest level. Amid all this, being a Kenyan is the hardest thing ever. This is what Obunga Opamo is saying. Also, we have Said Haji. He's saying if only we achieve above 19% tax collection, stop the tax evasion cartels and reform KRA, we will pay all the debt in a few years. And it's Master Luke, he says, it's time to be corrected. It's like President Mwakiba, I think I read this earlier, and we shall be. So those are your reactions. I shall be sampling some of them much later in the course of the program. But we want to see also what we had last week, where we had the headlines as well, just briefly to just run you by them. If you never got a chance to see the headlines last week, this will form also the basis of our discussion this morning with our panelists as well. This is what was headlining. It shall be running concurrently as we are, of course, discussing this. Top judge to be arrested overseas. This is how it went last week, and then we had so much speculation. People are calling me, who is this judge? Who is this judge? We want to know. And we saw how it really panned out last week with Deputy CJ being arraigned in court over, cases of corruption. But this has really drawn a lot of flack as well when it comes to how the whole scenario was handled. We have Senator Kindiki, who's a professor of public law and, of course, the current Deputy Speaker of the Senate, saying that he warned that the step-by-step DPP is a big blow for the judiciary and is bound to raise serious constitutional issues. First of all, from we know, Congo Mogeni, you are actually in this particular legal team that is, fighting for DCJ. We want to hear from you. Do you think, first of all, the way this scenario was handled, it was handled in the wisest of fashion by the Director of Public Prosecution?
Yeah, Debarl, I may not go into the details,
yes,
and more so the merits of the dispute pending before court, because that will be sub judice. But I think you can see that for the first time, the confidence that the Kenyan people have in the office of the DPP has taken a battering. And I think it's time for the DPP to reflect on how he exercises his constitutional powers under Article 157 of the Constitution. And I think the bigger debate should be, Debarl, how do we draw a line between what we can call civil commercial disputes and criminal actions that should attract criminal sanctions? I think that should be the debate that Kenyans should engage in. Number two is also that in waging the war against corruption, and I've seen a number of writers, including a lawyer, Kamodho Waiganjo, on Saturday, I think he wrote an article in the Daily Nation, that we should be careful not to trivialize the war against corruption. And I'm happy to note that in page 10 of today's Nation, the DPP has actually set up a task force on guidelines on how he should exercise his constitutional power of making a decision to charge people. And one of the things he wants to look at is, you know, minimum standards on decision making before a charge is preferred. If you look at the very first paragraph there, and I think to me that is loaded, because before you make a decision of taking an holder of a constitutional office, or especially a deputy chief justice of a country, then you must convince yourself that what you have is a watertight case. And you know, when you see all those headlines, when Kenyans see it, it is something that should be earth-shaking. You know, a decision that really tells Kenyans that there is a lot of graft in the office of that individual. Number two is that, you know, he is seeking guidelines on alternatives to prosecution. You know, because not every complaint that reaches the office of the DPP should end up in a prosecution being mounted in court. He should also have guidelines that should tell him, look, some of these cases maybe there could be an impropriety, but there are no criminal sanctions that come along with it. And then finally is that, you know, every human being can always make a mistake. Even at times you go to the High Court and judges will make a decision that is erroneous. You move up to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal can reverse it. And he's also saying that he wants guidelines on how he can review his decisions. What that means is that if he gets it wrong, he can go back and say that maybe I did this in the spur of the moment, I didn't consider this maybe deeply enough. So and now
is this a PR exercise coming from the DPP?
No, it's not PR. I think Debarl, it's a recognition that the powers that come in that office are huge, and when you exercise, you are affecting the rights, the freedoms of people. You are subjecting people to criminal trial. It's painful. You can see the headlines that have been there the whole week. So I think he's saying that as I exercise these powers, I need to be assisted. I need some guidelines in place that can make it you know, easy and fair in exercising the powers that have been donated to me by the Constitution. And I'm telling you, Debarl, there are many cases where you have seen, even the former DPP, Keriako Tobiko.
Yes.
There are instances where he has moved to court and said, sorry, I made this decision to charge and prosecute the suspect, but having reviewed the file, I don't think I have a case against this particular individual, and I now want to withdraw the case from court. So it's not something that is very new, but I think the route the DPP has taken is that he wants to get views from other stakeholders. You can see the representation includes the Law Society, the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Human Rights Commission, and I say for the better interest of this country, that's a good step by the DPP.
All right, but we understand, of course, there was consultation with the CJ regarding this, according to his statement. Then should we question the whole scenario, because it seems who is advising also, you know, the office of the DPP on legal matters? We asked him, was it handled in the right fashion? It wasn't, according to many panels. Just a moment, because the first route that they say the matter should have been taken to the JSC for the initiation of a tribunal to remove the Justice Mwilo from office, then prefer criminal charges against her once she was out. That will be the first route. The second will have been having held negotiation with the judiciary to have her resign or step aside, then charge her. That will have been another one. then the other route will have been to wait until she retires. Then you, of course, arraign her to court. Sort of immunity that we have with, I don't know, instead of, because people are saying it is legally right to arrest the deceased, but it is morally wrong, of course, to put that particular or to besmirch the office or the judiciary in its entirety, because this is where we're running for justice. I don't know what do you have? We'll come to you, Dr. Shemochuodo.
Debarl, I was watching the lady who was frying omena. You know, we normally talk of Mama Mboga. In this instance, let me talk of Mama Omena. That's one of my favorites. And I asked myself, the omena she had in the sufuria can be barely enough for one person. She was preparing that for our whole entire family. I would be very hesitant.
One person.
Yeah, that's omena. You know, it was
what you have taken yourself.
Being my delicacy. So I empathize. My point I'm trying to make is that I would be very hesitant to have two laws for two different sets of Kenyans, where we say some animals are more equal than others. But again, having said that, precedence has been set, and I agree with the Bwana Senator. My only thing is that I don't know if he's conflicted or not. I'm not sure whether, because during the hearing of the presidential petition, obviously you could see judges who appeared to have been leaning. I would have been very happy if Senator Omogeni and others were saying this regardless of which side that judge was seen to have been standing on. But having said that, I believe in the sanctity and the judicial independence of the judiciary. And precedence has been set in this regard. How did we deal with the case of Judge Nancy Barasa, in the case of Rawal, and similar? There was the other judge, appeal court judge, who was also, there was a tribunal set. So one needs to explain to Kenyans, why is it that we are not following that same method? I have been lauding media for exposing scandals after scandal and so on. But Debarl, in this particular case, I had a bit of reservation when media says a judge to be arrested. And then I wonder, I mean, how did they know? Is it somebody, and if there was an official source, why wasn't that source quoted? Or is there a conspiracy? So I think in the case of Judge Mwilo, my only hope is that, I hope it's not this a case of revisiting that the president did say when he, with humility, accepted the ruling of the Supreme Court when they annulled his first election, but said we'll revisit this matter. I'd want to know that there is no interference, because if the DPP and the courts and the arms of government prosecute are going to react to that, then of course it brings into question how independent is our judiciary, because the judiciary is the moral compass of society. That's all we have. If we dilute the JSC, the Judicial Service Commission, if we dilute the Supreme Court and the other arms of the judiciary, we're in great trouble. It's in this regard that we may not even have time to talk about it, but a number of Kenyans, including myself, are so concerned with why haven't the other members of the JSC been sworn in to take position, including Judge Wasame. Why is the president, why was he not gazetted as a member of the JSC, so that we have a fully constituted JSC? So the aspect of the judiciary, for me, it's one arm that I want to appeal to the executive. Let's not play with this, because we'd be playing with fire.
All right, let's hear from Jeremiah Kioni on this briefly. We'll come to you. Let's just go sequentially, because we have also here this lawyer saying that we put it in the affidavit in our petition before the High Court that the Director of Public Prosecution, Nuruddin Haji, was being driven by ulterior motives. Justice Mwilu's arrest was well planned to coincide with the first anniversary. Of course, since we had that particular, nullification of the presidential election. This is what Jackson Awele said, who is also in the leading legal team representing Justice Mwilu. Even looking at that particular timing, the way you said also media went full steam ahead to give a speculation that the judge will be arrested. They had an information about it. And this was coinciding with the first anniversary of during that particular ruling that we had. Do you think maybe the timing was a bit off? Because now we have also other lawyers taking scruples with this, that yes, we are suspecting this truly is a political move.
I am lost, Debarl. I put on a red jacket. I don't know what it coincides with today. I mean, you know, you can read all sorts of things from these things, but I think the important thing would be that, and I see the former Prime Minister telling his, I'm sure he's telling his brigade, including Senator Omogeni, don't politicize anti-corruption war, says Raila, and I'm sure he's speaking to all of us, including my senator here.
This is in the People Daily?
Yes, in a People Daily.
Page,
and I think one of the things is that...
What page is it?
In the People Daily, page 6. Okay. He's saying, he was accompanied by, among others, some of the people who appeared for the Deputy Chief Justice. Senator Olengo, he was with Othiambo, Chris Carr. I'm sure I'm looking for another lawyer. Omogeni, I don't know where Omogeni was. But I think he was clearly, we are going to ensure that there is no unfair prosecution. In fact, we have instructed those who are involved with the investigation of prosecution to ensure they have proper evidence before they begin any prosecution. But he said the dragnet might trap your relatives, but we want to ensure there is no victimization. You know, he's saying some very interesting things. I think when these kind of things happen, we are likely to read all manner of things. What I saw, and I thought I was a little bit unhappy with, was when the Deputy Chief Justice was arraigned in court, even before dealing with the merits or the demerits of the issue. What I thought was a little bit worrying was the choice, the Omogeni and his whole party team. You know, it was just like it was a NASA legal persons in Parliament who went to protect her. If I were the one as the Deputy Chief Justice, I'll be careful to make sure that I was represented by both sides of the political divide, right, so that my case is not only politically. When that happens, you crowd the reasonings. People stop being rational because they start looking at this. Why is it that only NASA lawyers are present there? How is it that I don't see any other lawyer perhaps from Jubilee who would have been saying, this issue of this is beyond the mark? I think the optics are not helping us, and we need to be very careful with that. Having said that, let me also say that I want to share with Dr. Oshoro that we have to be careful not to come up with two sets of standards. Where you steal mandazi, you are taken in very quickly. And not even an intern shows up to help you sort out the case. And you are alleged to have done some other crime, but because of what your status in society, all of us flock in the court. And we say this law should not have been applied to this person. And I'm not addressing the issue of Justice Mwiru. I don't know her in person. I only met her once when we were in Mombasa. We were both facilitating the induction of members of parliament. And I thought she was a very warm person. But my concern is that this war on corruption must be won. The momentum must be maintained. All of us must make sure that we do not delay it in any way, in any manner, through either what we say or how we behave. And this includes those members of parliament who are senior lawyers. We want them. Allow me to just finish, Debarl. And then we must avoid now, if the office of the DPP is acting outside what is provided for in the Constitution and the neighboring statute, again, there is a channel through which we can tackle and deal with him, even removing him. But we should avoid intimidating him. I hope he is not a person we can intimidate. We gave him a security of tenure for 6 years, where we are saying maybe after that he doesn't even need to look for another job, for the reason that he has to deal with all of us in office.
Thank you.
Every other person. Remember this debate. When a governor was arrested the other day, what did the governor say? We want immunity. Yeah? So it's like we are saying some persons in given position should commit crimes and nobody should ask. When you talk, I listened to Tom Ojeda last night. He was being interviewed by one of the other stations.
And I left confused. And he quite could not tell us what we needed to have done in the alternative of what was done by the DPP. And if only he did not show up for that, there would have been some real hope elsewhere. But when he showed up, to some of us, it was very clear. The DPP did not have any other choice.
He didn't have any other choice.
I mean, the JSC, even according to Tom Ojeda, is what the JSC would have done. He kept going round, quorum, committee, and all those kind of things.
Right. These are the governors who are seeking immunity during that time. They should.
Debarl and the panel, it is natural for really human beings to defend themselves. It's also natural for businessmen to take jobs that are available for them to make a living. I mean, unless you are a philanthropist, you cannot go to court to defend somebody for nothing. I can imagine that my panelist, my friend Mugeni, is not doing it for free, and therefore we should not be questioning why it's being done. However, what we want to question is, you know, you look at the kind of battery of lawyers who have gone to defend the deputy CJ. First of all, I did not even know that the former vice president is still practicing law, to really be in court defending a client of that nature. So I read a lot of politics in all of this thing, and let's not try to pretend there are no politics, basically, because when did Honorable Steve Kalonzo Musyoka lastly appear for somebody in court? For him to have come out of retirement and defend and be in court in the docks, I mean, and defend someone, it's really questionable. I read several things here. One, I do not want to say really the ugly head of tribalism that has come in here, because I looked at, of course, Wilu comes from a certain tribe, and I saw a battery of lawyers from that particular tribe kind of saying this is our own and being targeted. And then look at the political divide. We have most of those lawyers. Is it a coincidence that most of them are legislatures, especially from NASA side, who are currently in parliament? And some of them went to the extent of saying that their services are voluntary for free. I mean, they're free. Why? Why do you want to go to court and defend somebody for free? That's because there must be another motive beyond really having justice being done. Having said that, it is a very unfortunate incident, of course, even to Deputy CJ. But what has this done to the Kenyan image on fight against corruption? I want to tell you, it's looking very good. It's a small price to pay, or maybe a big price to pay, because we don't know who is going to be the next victim, even on this bench, because the whip is being cracked.
We have Mugeni as a lawyer.
And yes, Mugeni is here. But it's looking good, because out there it's seen that no one is immune. But now if you start creating this picture, this notion that we have two sets of laws, then it's a big problem. I want to hail the magistrate to handle this particular case. The young man looked very brave, and I really want to associate myself with this particular magistrate, not because he comes from my county, but to have handled that case the way he did, and that braveness, and you could see the way he was being battered by most of those lawyers and intimidated, then it's really commendable. And it is good to note that we have a judiciary that is not cowed or intimidated or easily can be even influenced with whatever means to bow to a decision just because they are looking at cases involving their bosses. Right. It's really commendable. Right.
Senator Opogiso.
Thank you. And I think
we should be preparing our headline thoughts.
We are putting Senator Morgan on the spot for nothing. And he was just the first one to show up there. So,
on pro bono basis. Maybe you should reveal this morning.
I hope you'll give you the last.
Yeah, we'll give you.
Okay. And the reason why those lawyers went there is, I mean, everybody wants good lawyers. So is my friend. I know he's a good lawyer. The other one is to say that I know Kalonzo Musyoka is an active lawyer. He didn't retire, except that he doesn't go to court, but he runs his law firm still. Now, the whole issue, Debarl, just requires that, let's be explicit. If we don't want governors to be arrested this way, let's be explicit, but put it in the law. If you don't want so and so, the only person we know is exempt from this kind of harassment would be the president of the country, that you cannot prefer these criminal charges while he's in office. But I don't think anybody else has that, we will all be taken through what has been happening. Besides, I just think that, like the governor is saying, the war on corruption, you just can't slow down. You cannot begin to intimidate anybody or cause it to look like it's coming to an end, because unless it is done, the other rules of how you arrest somebody or you present them to court, those to me are not the most important thing. The most important thing is to keep the fight against corruption going and going strong, and be able to encourage DPP. And not necessarily to discourage him. Okay, like anybody may make a mistake, but really not to make it look like now you've been beaten into submission, therefore don't do this, don't do that, and then you lose the fight. I think the reason why the DPP has a tenure and security is so that he's brave enough to do what he has. More importantly, I think, is this thing looks like it was canvassed at some point. Everybody seems to be sure. Even the judge seems to have known already, arranged the battery of lawyers that you're talking about. Because, I mean, after the arrest, everybody was in place. It's like everybody knew about it. So I don't know what the hullabaloo is about.
Thank you. All right. Your headline thoughts, briefly.
First, I think Honorable Kioni was trying to quote the PM right out of the context, because if you read page 6, what he says is that cases must be based on proper evidence
this
and
is
not
part also of your headline
hearsay,
yes,
and should not be inspired by witch hunt, okay, or attempt to settle old political scores. I think that's what he said. So, I mean, having said that, you know, we have about 3 senior councils in the Senate. I don't think there's none in the National Assembly. So by coincidence, all the 3 senior councils are NASA affiliated. So really, if the good brains are on the NASA side, governor,
check how they became.
governor, there's nothing we can do about it. Number 2, really.
Briefly, 30 seconds, we have some time.
Yes. Number 2, you know, the lawyers that are appearing for Judge Muilu are responding to an injustice. These are not lawyers that she prearranged and lined up to appear for her in court. These are people who are appearing for pro bono in the best interest of justice. 3, it's not true that it's only NASA lawyers. In fact, Mr. Wanyama was on the side of the president during the presidential petition, but he appeared in court in defense of Judge Muilu. And I could give you names if you are to be fair.
No, we're stuck for time. Let's leave it. This is a developing story. We'll still have it, I think, next time. Please. Let's hear from Jeremiah Kioni. Dr. Shemachudo, 30 seconds.
Debarl, it's very unfortunate in my view what NASA and ODM, particularly the Secretary General, came out in a way in defense. I think the handshake, one of the 9 points was fighting graft, and so far the party has done very well. And in this regard, I associate with the leader of the party, saying, look, let's treat matters in their own merit, and we shouldn't be seen to be ganging up to defend graft. Lastly, Rwandese are voting today diaspora in Kenya. One of the biggest requests of Kenyan diaspora is to be allowed to vote. If Rwandese in Kenya can vote in Mombasa and Nairobi, we need to do it also to our people.
Thank you. Let's hear from Governor.
Yeah, thank you, Debarl. Regardless of what is happening in the courts at the moment, I think the goodwill that is there at the moment to really put this country together after the handshake should really be taken advantage of, even when it comes to fighting corruption. Let us not be seen in our small roles, whether as a lawyer, whether in GSC or in parliament, to be leaning towards political alienation, because we'll lose our cause.
Right, thank you. That's it. Lastly, Senator Pogisio.
Yes, just to keep encouraging us, Debarl, as a country, that we need to come together on this issue of the fuel increase and be sure that our people are represented well. I just want to say the government must reverse this decision.
Right. Jeremiah Kioni,
lastly. The President heeding the call on these issues of fuel prices, but also let us as Kenyans be behind Haji. We should support him. He's done what we want and done since 1963. I believe that he will not be doing anything for purposes of witch hunt. But as Kenyans, let's support the fight against corruption. It may even help us on these fuel prices.
Thank you very much. Our panelists this morning, of course, an engaging, very cogent discussion we've had today. And we eagerly wait to see what is the way forward as far as the fuel value-added tax, that is 16%, is concerned. And of course, we can see so much of the reactions on social media. We want to thank you so much. But we're stuck for time. I can't be able to read all of them. But I want to also take this opportunity to let you know about living with us. They're discussing homeschooling today. So if you want to take that route, this will be a handy opportunity for you to listen in. Thank you very much for your valued company. See you tomorrow.